Luke Braun, first of all, how are you? And are the Broncos good?
Second question first. I have no idea. As to the first question, I'm absolutely fine and under no threat of duress.
Blink twice. Oh, okay, he did. I'm worried now. Arif Hassan is in Denver. Maybe he has a better read on it because Luke Braun was clueless. Are the Broncos good at football? The Vikings' next opponent.
I would argue no. Russell Wilson looks a little bit better. Obviously, people have been talking about how, Sean Payton has kind of finally figured out how to resolve the Russell Wilson problem. I guess I don't know how else to put it. And honestly, I don't see it that way.
He took the apron off Russ and did not let him cook. Is that the solution?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think that Wilson has improved, not enough to argue that the Broncos are a good team. I think that their last 2 wins are more a product of just surprising ineptitude from some very good teams that are normally not that inept. I just think that, sometimes, bad teams beat good teams. The Broncos are probably better than we thought at the beginning of the season, certainly after that Miami beatdown. I don't think they're a good team.
The Broncos have not allowed more than 22 points in 4 games, and yet they are still last in points allowed, rush defense, pass defense. But you might also be catching them at the worst possible time. If you caught this team sort of like this happens a couple times a year where you just get a schedule win based on when you face a team. And Luke Braun, it feels like the wrong time to face Denver. Vikings are banged up. Denver's a little healthier, getting reinforcements, playing well at home, and maybe feeling like they have a chance to get back in the wild card race.
Yeah, I was talking to Sayre Bettinger of Locked On Broncos on the crossover, and we kind of said like both these teams are in a similar spot where it felt, if you talk to them at the end of September, we're all looking at quarterbacks and we're figuring out who we're going to draft
position,
and then suddenly things turned around. To me, the most compelling thing about the Broncos is the defensive turnaround. And I kind of asked, like, was that Dolphins game just an outlier, or were they bad and now they are playing better? And it maybe is this the outlier? Like, where is it? And it's a hard question to answer, but it's not like they're doing this against scrubs. Like they've held Patrick Mahomes to pedestrian numbers. They've held Josh Allen to pedestrian numbers. I want to look more into exactly how that is working. Obviously, Pat Surtain has a lot to do with it, Vance Joseph. But one thing that I'm curious about is that the teams that they have played they're good offenses. They're different offenses from the ones the Vikings run. The Vikings are the McVay-Shanahan thing. The only team on the Broncos schedule since that 70 debacle that is off of the McVay-Shanahan tree, at least unless I'm wrong here, is the Packers. And they don't really do it the same way anymore. Like LaFleur's kind of off on his own in his own world. So I think that will be like a true test of like, okay, we do things the same way Miami do them. We're the most similar team to Miami that you have played since that thing. Have you improved in this?
So Russell Wilson feels middle of the packish this year. I mean, 18-4 touchdown to pick ratio. He's been really good though against pressure. Got a better passer rating under pressure than clean. In fact, 105 versus 103.7. Does take sacks, does fumble, but interested to see how Flores approaches this one, Arif. And if you've seen the splits, his blitz rate actually has decreased quite a bit since the opening few games.
Yeah, it has. I don't want to like overstate the decrease in blitz rate. Obviously, it kind of depends on the service that you use. ESPN Stats and Info, we found, has a different blitz rate than PFF. But yeah, I mean, and I think Sport Radar is like another thing entirely, and that's what Pro Football Reference uses for their blitz rate. So I don't want to overstate the change in blitz rate too much. Obviously, Flores acknowledged it in a presser, which is kind of fun to see. But when you look at like who they've blitzed, it actually has made a lot of sense. Mayfield has historically struggled under the blitz. Herbert has not struggled with blitz or not blitz, but he is worse with the blitz than without the blitz. One of the few elite quarterbacks where that's the case. He's still like good against the blitz, so I don't want to like oversell that argument. And so it could be that the Vikings just had a schedule where like the first 5 games of the season they were against quarterbacks that either we knew were probably not very good against the blitz, or were like Tyson Bagent and we're just like probably we should blitz them, right? Like when you've got like 2 games where the backup quarterback ends up entering the game, it's just like, yeah, we'll see how they handle this, right? I would argue that, first of all, pressure and blitz, obviously we know that those are different. I would argue that the fact is the argument that Russell Wilson is good under pressure, I think, is an argument for my case that actually he is not playing sustainably well, because quarterbacks under pressure do not sustain their numbers under pressure over time, even within the same season. It's your standard or your clean pocket presence that better predicts how well you do in upcoming games. If you take a look at Wilson when blitzed, which he is one of the least blitzed quarterbacks in the NFL, so kind of important. His PFF grade does drop a fair amount versus the blitz. He's actually 32nd out of 39 in PFF grade versus the blitz. But again, very small sample. He's one of the least blitzed quarterbacks in the NFL. So I wonder kind of how they'll approach that when you've got kind of a small sample, when the history of Russell Wilson kind of doesn't help you all that much, because you've got, I don't know how much last year counts, given how bad the coaching was, and then obviously all that time in Seattle, way different than the one we're seeing in Denver. So really curious about how Flores is going to approach that.
Bron, who scares you on the Broncos, if anybody, offense or defense? Which players are you circling on the depth chart?
Like I mentioned, Surtain, although he has had some rougher moments this year, so maybe you can hand one there. We have no idea who's playing as a receiver too. Like maybe JJ's here. I don't feel like it, but who knows? I think just watching the Monday night game that they're coming off of, and that's what's fresh in my mind. It's like Javonte Williams on those stupid little shovelly checkdowns way late in the play after Russell Wilson has bought a whole bunch of time and then he scampers for like 25 yards. That feels like the kind of thing that can change everything, where you got this great pressure on a 2nd and 10 and it's a drive killer, but then they manage to like get it away. The Broncos, and at least according to Sayer, like to retreat into sort of quick game when they're getting pressured a lot, which is sort of the Brian Flores defense wants to sort of force you into whatever your PJ Fleck is, right? So I like that. I want that to be the case where Russell Wilson's trying to get the ball out quick and he's not doing this like run around improv stuff where he can, throw the craziest throw you've ever seen and it works because it's the Vikings kind of deal, like what Jameis Winston did in the second half. I would much rather this game come down to like tackling against Cortland Sutton,
For me, Broncos secondary seems very good. Jaquan McMillan last 5 weeks has been right there with Paulson Adebo, best corner in the NFL. Kareem Jackson is back from a suspension. Fabian Moreau got elevated 3 weeks ago and has been really good. Historically, he's not that good, but he has been good since they gave him a bigger role. Kawan Williams is out. Pat Surtain, as you mentioned. So on the road, outdoors, Mile High City, I feel like the passing attack is going to be tested. And again, how will Denver adjust to Dobbs' mobility? Will he have those plays that he's had regularly for the first 2 games that can extend drives when the pocket breaks down, when the coverage is really good? Arif, what do you think of this Broncos defense?
I think the concern for them when it comes to scrambling is that their speed at linebacker is not that great. It just hasn't been great for a little bit now. And so, because it was like Josie Jewell ran like a 4.7 and he kind of plays like it on the field. I mean, he's a very smart player. Obviously, he knows how to play really well, but it creates problems when you're kind of moving back and forth and extending all the way to the other side of the pocket. That lack of athleticism might mean you've got a safety spying Dobbs or something else. I don't know. But then now you're taking that safety out of coverage, or you're putting a safety in when you want a linebacker in against the run. It'll create some issues for them. When the Saints put Pete Werner as a spy on Dobbs, I mean, we saw it. It didn't work out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think having a less athletic linebacker in that position could create some additional problems. That said, the secondary is going to define things, right? If we end up continuing to have, like, I would argue, surprising or unsustainably good play from some of these corners that are not Pat Surtain, right? I mean, I just trust that he's good, right? But you know, like if for example Kareem Jackson now coming back from suspension shows his age, or Jaquan McMillan regresses or something, there's going to be a lot of opportunities there for the Vikings, right? But I think a lot of it will be built around kind of how Dobbs innovates and creates, because right now there doesn't seem to be a third or fourth read in that offense, which actually, hey, let's plug something. Luke Braun wrote for the Wide Left Substack. He wrote about Jalen Nailor.
No duress. Let me emphasize.
We don't need to discuss the conditions under which Luke ended up producing an article, surprisingly, for the Wide Left Substack.
So wait, Luke is under Arif's employ now?
Employ could be one word that you use. I don't know. But
that assumes some details, but we don't need to get into those details.
Like, right. So, but between employee and hostage, where's like a good middle ground there?
The Constitution says I don't have to answer that.
Yeah, the Constitution says I don't have to answer that. But yeah, I mean, one element for why Jalen Nailor didn't get a ton of targets is because the way that those plays are designed, he's like the third or fourth read in the progression, right? And you know, Luke goes into it in the piece, and I think that there's just something with the way that they're coaching Dobbs. It's like, hey, first read, second read, legs, right? Your check down or your legs, right? And so I think that that's going to continue to be part of the way that offense is run. And so I don't know how important it is that the Broncos may have an advantage in their secondary. Plus, I just feel like TJ Hawkinson's going to go off again.
Yeah, I don't know if it's how they're like coaching Dobbs necessarily. I think it's just that Dobbs is not going through his reads as quickly as Kirk did. Which, like, duh. But it means that, like, yeah, he's not like getting to that like backside of the read, that backside basic kind of thing. That is like how Cousins, I mean, he made a living doing that, right? Going like 1-2, take the basic. And that would be those like nice 15-yard right over the middle to Justin Jefferson kind of throws. Yeah, Dobbs just isn't getting to those, and it's fine because like that also, to get to that, you also have to decline TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, which like those guys are just like open, and then you just take that and you just never even look at Nailor. So yeah, I wonder if Justin Jefferson doesn't go, Surtain does tend to shadow. So I'm going to guess that he follows Jordan Addison around everywhere. And then the question becomes, you know, is Surtain just going to like bully Addison all over the field? And then do we have to rely on Hawkinson and Nailor and Brandon Powell and KJ Osborne, who should be back?